Hey guys, and welcome to the next Chronicles of Ellyria tribe video. This ep, we're going to be focusing on the Hrothi. I am joined today by the Duke of Dawn's Throne, Saebelorn.
Hello, everybody.
If you guys want to place down in Saeb's beautiful duchy, you will find his capital delving of virtue down in the southeast of that mountainous region. And I have to say, I do like your placing on the map.
Oh, well, thanks. I just followed where the capital was, so you shouldn't thank me.
Fair enough, I can understand that one. And guys, I don't know if you know at all, I'm actually having my own alt mare that's Hrothi, so you can look for my settlement as well. I'll give you details about that later, but today let's focus on Sabe more so than myself.
Yes. Especially since you dodged my poor duchy.
Oh, yes, that's true.
You jumped the border.
I did. I apologize.
That's okay. We forgive. We're all good
Yes.
Vertori here.
We are very good Vertori. Actually, both my tribes are Vertori now that you mention it.
Nice. See, now we won't have to fight at all.
We'll get along perfectly. Okay, so let's get started in the Hrothi dissection. If you guys want to play Hrothi on the Oceanus server, you will only find them up in the northern continent of Aequitus. So the biomes they thrive in, I suppose, is the Alpine Tundra. On our map, you'll have those in Ashmouth, Dawn's Throne, and Titan's Throne. And the Hrothi are also found in the Alpine Coniferous Forest, but we don't have any on the Oceanus map for reasons unknown.
Oh, well, I can talk about that, actually, if we want to start with a very interesting little nugget of Illyrian history.
I'm here to learn.
We did have an Alpine Coniferous Forest.
But?
It got disappeared and replaced during post-map generation.
Oh.
So this would have been last year following map select. And I was doing my usual shilling for Hrothi in the official Discord, as I do.
Mhm.
And I think I caught the ear of Caspian when I was talking about resources and settlement distribution in Hrothi lands, because we only had one biome by virtue of being a much smaller server than the others. And so Caspian hit me up and said, well, actually, in the common room, and said, well, actually, we're pretty sure the Hrothi are going to be balked in this configuration. We've been looking at redoing the biome. And a few talks later, and we had the biome regenerated.
Damn.
Which, well, it was kind of sad because the original renders of the coniferous forest had some beautiful features, like a big ring of mountains that almost formed a crater or a bowl. But yeah, we don't know what it would have looked like come domain selection, since a lot of things did change.
Sounds like it would have been beautiful and highly contested. Everybody would have wanted that right in the middle of that crater.
I know, and that's where a lot of people looking. I was going to go to the giant clump of mountains to the north. Now I am in. But with the generation, I mean, I'm not complaining because ultimately we needed it to stay relevant economically, politically, and we've got more mountains now, which,
yes,
as anybody with a cursory look at Illyria should know, Hrothi like mountains.
That's an understatement.
Oh yeah. So, to sort of bury the lead here and go into what the Hrothi actually are, for those just getting into the game, they are the stocky dwarf tribe of Illyria, which is to say, inspirations from Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, but with a different spin taken on it. For example, they're much more about books, about wisdom and erudition than, your normal beer-guzzling dwarf. And they are a lot more, I'd say, religiously focused. And, of course, because to be contrarian, they don't like beards.
I don't get that. That's not mentioned anywhere on the websites, but I know it's a thing.
Oh, well, it's been the subject of a few salvos by the devs in Discord, but it is not on
any official statements, is it?
It may be.
Maybe in one of the dev journals or something. That's just so fascinating.
I can't find it right now, but the reasoning is fairly solid, mostly from Snipe, who is one of the Hrothi-loving fellows in the
Yeah.
studio. The rationale was basically that one, living underground among a lot of minerals and dust with a beard that, tends to collect dust and insects and things, probably not the best idea. And
Yeah.
possibly the religious justification coming out of that organically is the idea that, well, having a beard makes you look unkempt and lazy anyway, which is bad Vittori.
Very bad. That's good though. I like how they've, even though the Hrothi are based on dwarves, they've completely separated themselves from that fantasy stereotype, even just by the lack of facial hair.
Oh yeah, and I think it does help. It gives it more, I don't know, cultured and measured approach to them than, I don't know, running around with double axes, which we will do.
Yeah.
Just
But
not in the cities.
no, that's more the outside areas above ground.
that's where we can, play around with the surface folk.
Yeah. I know that there is a lot of discussion on the Discords about, I don't think it's on our servers necessarily, but on some of the other servers, that people want to introduce facial hair to the Hrothi.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I don't know how that's going to go.
It's everybody except me, let's face it.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. As you say, it goes against Hrothi nature, so I just think it's just...
Look,
violates.
myself and Balf had a heated discussion about it during the PAX meetup just recently, and it probably will come to a civil war. No.
No!
Look,
I don't want to get caught up in that.
It's fine. I'll leave your settlement alone when I send over the legions, the beardless legions, I may add.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those big things. I know very specific cases of players who have sworn off Hrothi because they've been said to be beardless, which to me seems like an overreaction.
What? Wow. I mean, I can understand not choosing the Teresk because of their teeth, but not choosing Hrothi because they don't have beards just seems a bit strange.
Yeah, I mean, you can grow one. That's the thing.
Oh yeah, it's not like you're physically incapable.
A social rep bonus or negative. But oh well, to each their own.
That's very true. So yes, you guys, or us guys, because I am Hrothi,
Hooray.
mental pursuits are more what they are known for, but they're also got that up body strength for the digging.
Oh yeah, so that sort of dovetails into Hrothi stats in general, but yes, in the old write-ups, which I don't think actually show up anywhere officially now, they are said to be one of the highest mentally focused tribes, and physically they are, well, they're so built into strength that they outclass Broodveer despite being half their height.
What?
Depending if that's relative or not, I'm not totally sure, but Caspian did post a list of tribes by strength, and it was Hrothi, Broodveer, and then Genoa.
Wow.
Or maybe it was Hrothi, Genoa. Either way, Hrothi are at the top.
Yeah, as you say, it could be relative to size. So.
Yeah, so we'll have to
Still
see
curious.
how that goes, but
Yeah.
I do want to try lifting around Broodveer.
Go for it. I mean, you're nowhere near them, but go for it.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, are there Broodveer in your side of the continent?
Ooh, I think there's one minority settlement, and maybe not even that. I
here we
believe
go.
most of
Yeah.
the...
You've got 11%. There you go.
Ooh. Oh yeah, no, there are minority Broodveer everywhere, but there is no one settlement that I can remember
No.
right now
That's
in my
wholly
lands
of-
which have
yeah.
any... There is a couple in Ashmouth, I remember.
Mhm. But none in yours.
Yeah.
Still, I'm sure you'll find a few Broodveer to have arm wrestling comps with and whatnot.
Yeah, as long as they don't make me have to raise the height of the tunnel. They'll have to crawl around.
Just spike their mead with a little alcohol and you'll win.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think any sort of mead is already spiked with alcohol as far as Broodveer are concerned.
That's a fair point.
It's sort of the shame that Caspian set it up that the only tribe who has the aesthetic of heavy drinking can't, and the only
drink.
tribe that has the physiological, powerhouseness to drink as much as they want is religiously probably not going.
Going to be, going to the pub and getting smashed.
Oh well, I'll turn
I
a
think it's good. It's, as I said before, it's destroying stereotypes.
But yeah, that is all to say that they're extremely strong and smart and socially middling, but apparently better than Neren, who are used as the base point. But as far as their physicality goes, they're unbalanced, as you can.
Very.
Like, their list of penalties are all related to their body type, which is slow and short.
But you will know that slow is actually, I'm sorry, short is also a bonus.
Yeah, so short has its ups and downs. It probably will do stuff like weapon reach will be better for non, and that has led to a lot of fury crafting on my end. But it does also mean that you cannot jump over fences.
Yep, no vaulting. That's a Hrothi.
So, I mean, my imaginations of a beautiful army of Hrothi marching across the landscape are sort of ruined when the enemy just puts up a bunch of lines of fence.
They don't even have to be big fences. They could just be small fences if you can't get over them.
They can just be pebbles and we'll trip over. Too top heavy or too swole.
Yeah, you guys are. But I mean, at the same time, you've got some good stuff going for you.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, look, let's see. Will you give me permission to rant about Hrothi's almost indomitable defensive ability?
Go for it.
Okay, because this is one of my favorite things to unload on people in the Discord. It's, I mean, it's just, I don't believe for a minute that Hrothi will get to launch in their current state, because it just feels broke. So you have their strength, you have the fact that they live underground in extremely narrow choke points, you have the fact that they have dark vision, so they can not only see underground in pitch blackness in caves, they can see in any sort of darkness, which Snipe confirmed to me at one point. So they can just run around in darkness and stab you in the shin. Because I believe darkness is going...
Could be the thigh.
Yeah, in the... Okay, well...
The kippick would be the shin.
Yeah. Have some self-respect, Sabe.
Yes.
Yeah, stabbing in the thigh, because I believe that darkness will be mechanical, which makes it incredibly powerful when it wouldn't have seen at first blush, where you could actually be hidden from the game's rendering if you're, running around with your night vision. And it's just, on top of that, Hrothi have the strongest armor in the game at launch. They have their magical Hrothic alloy, which, as far as I've been able to tell, is the most sophisticated metal type in the game so far. So it's like the Hrothi are designed to not be bothered by anything.
But that's good though, because they can't go on the offensive necessarily because of their shortcomings.
Oh,
plus
exactly.
Disinterest.
Shortcomings.
But also disinterest in going and attacking people. So I think it's fair that, as on the flip side, they are like so defensible, you are not getting in.
Oh, exactly. And that comes down a lot to the asymmetrical balance of the game, especially with tribes. You just cannot conquer a Hrothi militarily, but you could do other things. You could, throw a spanner in the works economically. You could, block their metal trade, and then they're kind of poor now because their economy's a one-trick pony. Or you could instigate a civil war between two Hrothi duchies, and their bonuses sort of cancel each other out. A civil war over beards, for example. Which is one of those things where it's like,
Things that are possible.
Things that are possible.
Let's stop giving them ideas.
I don't want to. Yeah, I'll see the Neren duchies to the west rubbing their hands of glee as the Hrothi wear each other out. But
take over the land.
Yeah, they can't be conquered. But they can't really conquer. So it suits their philosophy perfectly, really, where they're just happy to live in their mountain and have their books and their libraries and mining and not really bother.
So if you guys are looking at playing a heavily war-oriented character, or that kind of physical pursuit, or you want to be a conqueror or something, don't pick Hrothi. There are other tribes for you. This is not it.
Yeah. Although, interestingly, as far as the tribe ratings, Hrothi are actually gladiatorial and commercial, which seems a bit strange to me.
I mean, I look at it from a Roman perspective in that you can have a Hrothi arena. Therefore, maybe they get their physical enjoyment out of gladiatorial battles more so than going off to battle.
Yeah, it certainly could be. And maybe the gladiatorial just refers to how defensive they are rather than anything else, where...
I guess it's something we'll find out as time goes by.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as recommendations for Hrothi, when Caspian was explaining what tribes to pick for what sort of gameplay, he gave a very nice quote, which I'll give now is, "If I wanted to play a tribe that was organized, had purpose, and enjoyed gaining knowledge, or one that was tightly integrated into the early part of the 10-year story, I'd play Hrothi." So some portents of things to come there.
Actually, that's right. What event is it? One of the first events happens in Hrothi space.
Yeah, the big one. There's the prologue, which is bordering Hrothi. But I think that the actual run-on from that will affect the whole kingdom and the whole area.
Yeah, but predominantly it's going to start right there. So we're going to be the forefront of the action.
It'll be good. It'll be good fodder for my library.
Ah.
The events that are happening in the first year of the story.
You're not wrong. You could have a grand library once it gets started.
Oh yeah, exactly. And like Hrothian libraries, I believe that's actually what brought me to the tribe in the first place. Because I remember picking up the game in November of 2017, and I was reading all the developer journals in order, and I saw the tribes, and then I saw the Hrothi, and the moment I saw libraries, I'm pretty sure I just locked onto that tribe and have never looked away. Because that's my gimmick.
Yep, I hear you. The minute you'd say the words to me, Roman architecture, libraries, and like illuminated manuscripts, you had me hooked.
Oh, exactly. And that's just like perfect. And that's another thing to dovetail back into the idea of them differentiating Hrothi is it was a very good move, I think, going for the Greco-Roman rather than your normal sort of Tolkien-esque dwarf stuff, which is this massive stone and metal and
and brash drunkards.
Yeah, and brash drunkards. It's more refined. Like I had a bit of a fit when I saw the Hrothi architecture concept art because we've historically got very little in terms of shinies. And so when we finally saw that, after flying blind of the tribe for about a year and kind of just, hoping things would be all right, it's like, yep, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, this is why we held on.
Yeah, you've got Greek colonnades, you've got pediments, you've got everything. It's like they took a leaf right out of the book, but I'm not complaining. It's beautiful.
It really is. Just circling back to finish up the tribal traits, there's two we haven't mentioned yet.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so specifically, the Hrothi do have underground sensors, so that when they are underground, they can actually discern north and the time of day. So they don't need the sun, the stars, or any of that to figure that out, which is handy.
Oh, yeah. And I think that for an average player, it's basically necessary. When you're moving around in 3 dimensions like that, you'd probably lose track of things within if you didn't have some sense of north.
Yeah, especially with the winding tunnels.
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to be contributing to that.
Already claiming to be guilty. Fantastic.
Yeah, I like my my surreal architecture, so I'll just have some tunnels that go around in circles and circles.
Your prerogative. And the final bonus that you technically have, or we technically have, is the earthen crafting expertise. So, due to the nature of the Hrothi, they are faster at crafting with stone, and they're really skilled at creating new patterns for stonework.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one, but it makes sense. I tend to overlook it because it's not my focus, but it is definitely there, and it's going to be, well, one of those things that keep us extremely relevant in that field. Like, oh, you've got the concrete. I'm sure that we can do it better in a year or two from launch.
Definitely a good place that I think a lot of Hrothi may be focusing on that.
Oh yeah, and I've got a few quarriers already in my duchy, so I'm sure we'll be making use of.
Brilliant.
Let's see. Is there anything else to think of regarding their actual tribal features? I don't think so. The only thing I could think of is that they apparently have their own language, which I don't know if all tribes do. But
Most of them do actually, that I've researched so far, but each language has such interesting characteristics. Can you pronounce this language, by the way?
I believe it's something like Naeroth.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
I don't know how to pronounce all those.
It looks like Naeroth. So it's said to be gruff and grating, which I can understand, given their stocky bodies projecting this different language. But it's got some interesting characters in the language.
Yeah, so you've got
There's
a lot
no
of
X, no X from the get go,
well,
which is fine. Not the best ladder.
we'd be we'd be tripping over it. As long as we can write it in our books, we don't need to be able to say it though.
Exactly.
As far as the actual symbols go, it seems to be inspired by your kind of Germanic, Gothic languages, maybe. Especially that combined AE,
Yep.
which I do not know the name of.
I do, but I've forgotten, and I probably should have reminded myself prior to this.
Not to worry. But yeah, it's interesting.
And you got the vowels with the, is it grave or grave? I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but the opposite of the acute accent, the downwards.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, you've got all your vowels with that above it. So definitely I get a Germanic feel to it. Yep. It's hearty.
I'll have to go get Vi to work on a Hrothi IPA.
Oh, yes.
So that I can say these things with confidence.
Absolutely. Come on, Vi. Give us a paragraph. Go.
Come on, Vi. Communications DJ 2.0.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah. So that's Neroth. As per pretty much most of the tribes, they all speak Neren. Just, trade. Yay.
Oh, and historical friendships.
And then the final language, I'm not 100% sure on the pronunciation. Denhort?
That's one of those. It's probably Denhort or something. Yes.
Yeah.
I do not know. It's just Broodveer.
Yeah,
honestly,
it's the language of the lowlanders.
Who would even bother?
Nah. So you've got this Denhort language that the Hrothi and Broodveer will speak, so they can communicate with that rather than the Naren. But apparently, rumor has it the Yoru speak Denhort.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I always assumed the Yoru would be up your way, like continent-wise. So when we find the Yoru, it's cool that you guys can automatically communicate with the Yoru because you possibly have a shared language already.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And the Yoru stuff is curious. Well, it hasn't been touched for a while, their lore, but in the past it was thought that they would be on the starting continent. I always believed they'd be on a separate one, which seems to be the case now. Yeah. So I'm assuming they're up to the north, which puts the northern Hrothis and northern Broodveer in a good position to find them.
Well, it just makes sense because aren't they in the tundra? So really freaking cold.
Just like the complete unlivable sort of zone, presumably up to the north.
Yeah.
But yeah, I imagine that Hrothi will be able to talk to them and will be able to take all their stories home and lock them nicely in the great libraries.
Uh-huh. Just where you want them.
Yeah. Where nobody can touch them.
So moving on to environment, we've pretty much mostly touched on the fact that the Hrothi like to live underground, but they don't just live in their delvings. They do also reside above ground.
Indeed. And that configuration has changed a bit over the game's tribe designs. Originally, the idea was almost more of a Tolkien-esque sort of dwarven thing where you would have all of the dwarven counties, Hrothi counties rather, being inside mountain ranges, anything large, and with their gates being locked by duchy entrances. So each duchy, of which there would be multiple in one mountain, would hold one entrance inside the Hrothi civilization almost. With domain selection, that's changed now. So we do see that the Hrothi are more disseminated evenly throughout their biomes.
Mm-hmm.
So originally it was thought that they'd be connected by networks of tunnels, basically, which doesn't seem to be the case now. It
No.
looks like instead you go down through a tunnel entrance, which Snipe says will probably have a bit of a surface element, like inns, anything above ground that you can't just stuff underground.
Mm-hmm. Under your fields.
Yeah, so
farms.
fields around, inns for tall people if
Mm-hmm.
the settlement is too short for you to.
Yeah, perhaps maybe a
Yeah.
small market or two, again, to use
Yeah,
trade with your
exactly.
taller allies.
Yeah, markets, all that stuff, but then there would be some sort of maybe multiple tunnel entrances using the tunneling mechanics, and you'd pop down and you'd be in a Hrothi paradise, presumably. But to go between Hrothi settlements, you'd have to pop up and go down the overground.
But I guess it also gives us scope to create those underground connections ourselves if we so choose over the course of the 10 years. It's not going to be something that happens overnight. But if we
Yeah.
want to join two delvings together, there's no reason that we, well, necessarily that we can see, that we can't just start digging on both ends and meeting in the middle, though navigation would be difficult, but it's possible.
Yeah, and absolutely. I've toyed with the idea. As an archetypal Hrothi, I'm very careful about this stuff, and upon looking at my EP compared to the cost to do it before, I decided, yeah, let's do this after launch if we want
Yes.
to connect things with tunnels.
Definitely. Well, I mean, at the same time, it works for your bottom line. You know, as you dig, you've got your minerals, you've got your stone. There's all this stuff that you're gathering in the process that you can then use. Whereas if you just slap it down with EP, you're losing that value.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a lot of value to lose anyway. And a lot of skill gain for your early construction characters to lose, and just in general, I think it's more fulfilling to do it in game.
I wonder if that's perhaps why they scrapped it and decided to separate the
possible.
settlements to give the Hrothi a goal, a task, something that they can choose to do if they so wish to fill their 10 years.
I think it's a good point, especially because it probably It probably encourages use of the mechanics more. And sort of tied to that is, I think that the original idea for the Hrothi was probably a little too different to everything else, to the point where they would have been putting in a lot of design work basically to
Yeah.
appease a single tribe, when mechanically they could have done it this way, which works just as well.
Yeah. And I like it, so yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, you've got your settlements, you come up from underground, and I believe Hrothi settlements are overall settled around highland, or at least something with enough
For the
land
most part.
below them to burrow
Yeah.
into. And
So
in that case, around them would be your, on our server, just the Alpine Tundra, which is unfortunately treeless, as far as we've heard.
Well,
But
it's
with
part of the
one
maps, though.
caveat, yeah. With the caveat that apparently they're adding microbiomes.
Yes.
Yeah, a valley microbiome, which may be our saving grace, because no
God, I hope
trees.
so.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's gonna look very ravaged if we don't have any trees.
Oh, I mean, I think we can handle well enough with some nice little grasses and whatnot.
Just something green.
That's the Nerin in you speaking.
Yeah.
Embrace the mineralization.
The Nerin living in a Kippic place. Yep, that's guilty.
Yeah, exactly. You Nerin at heart. If I don't walk outside of my capital and see beautiful cliffs of basalt unblemished by grass or any sort of greenness, I will be very upset.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So I guess still tying into the environment itself is the food that the Hrothi eat.
Yeah, so dryland agriculture is, I believe, the name of the game for Hrothi, as well as some underground stuff, but to start with the
Subterranean
above
farming.
ground. Oh, yeah, so mushies and whatnot, but
The glowing mushies.
I don't know how glowy they are, or is that I might be
They're
thinking of
supposed to be
glow tater.
glowy. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's the taters.
Yeah, it's the
They're the glowy
taters.
ones.
We'll have to transplant them. But there is that, I believe it's a starberry bush from that same, which also, it may glow, in which
I'm
case
just
we can
so salty.
transplant them.
Yeah, well, I'm just salty I can't get them over in my Naren joint.
It's okay, you can bring them over. I'm sure there's some well-meaning fellow, or is it a climatic?
It's climatic, and also the fact that you need darkness for the starberries.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we need to
okay.
develop research and stuff to be able to facilitate basement
Yeah,
plants
right.
and
So
stuff.
not to begin with. So in that case,
eventually.
Hrothi will get their
Starberry
starberry
shortcakes?
farm. Yes, starberry shortcakes. I
That's
won't.
what I was eyeing up.
I have to abstain. See, as the Duke, I have to be a perfect Hrothi. I'll only eat
Oh,
the
that's
purest millet, I believe.
Yes.
It's taken from the valley slopes, and it has to be completely unflavored. Well, apart from salt, because that's a mineral, and we love our minerals.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But I have to say,
yeah.
overall, it doesn't sound like a very inspiring diet for the Hrothi.
Yeah. We get meat, I believe, and I'm
Yeah.
sure the Broodvia diaspora in our lands will help us out with that, because,
Definitely.
stubby legs hunting elk and goats, maybe not.
Fun image, though. Fun
Yeah.
image.
But we basically do just subsist on crops like, well, from here, milo, alfalfa, stuff
Wheat.
that's, wheat as well. So, yeah, you don't pick Hrothi if you want beautiful cuisine. You pick Torresk.
Mm-hmm. Pick the ones who appreciate the luxury in life.
Yeah, because, well, to move nicely into another important aspect of Hrothi culture is how unostentatious they are. So, I mean, depending on how players react to it, but I know for my part, if I find a vein of gold, we'll just sell it immediately. No jewelry for me.
I don't mind it per se. I just because I don't have like minerals as an errand, so
Oh yeah,
I would like to have
vicarious enjoyment.
Yeah, pretty much. I would like to see a thriving jewelry industry down my way if I can facilitate that.
And I believe there will be, because the domain and settlement map did show jewelers as notable people
Not
in
in my
Hrothi
space,
land.
but we'll work on it. We'll work on that.
Import them.
They will come.
But that's fine. I mean, for my part, I am going for more of an extreme Vertori thing, because I like it a lot, that lore.
Yeah, it's magnificent.
I will allow the moral failings of other Hrothi, like beards and jewelry.
Jewelry's fine.
It's okay.
Beards. I mean, as long as it's not too ostentatious. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Pretty baubles to an extent.
Yeah.
Kind of allowed.
I'll turn a blind eye is how I'll phrase it.
Well, since we're speaking about jewelry, let's just go into clothing and adornments.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
As far as clothing goes, I think they're fairly simplistic. You're looking at shirts and vests and things like that. Or one wonders how that's going to change now that the biome's a little different, especially on OCE.
Well, I think there's a lot more wool for the above ground wear.
Yeah, and especially now that we have rams, I think wool will actually become more of a prime.
Makes sense.
Metals was strangely listed as a clothing element, but maybe they meant in terms of armor.
Armor. Which is funny though, because the armor to me doesn't look like it's made out of metal. It's made out of leather, because it looks very Persian.
Let's see. So it's basically what is it called?
Looks like studded leather to me.
It's not lamellar. It's like plate. I forget now, but basically sheets of plate metal, and I believe they are metal.
Okay.
But I'm not entirely sure what. The first one may be leather, the light armor.
The light armor, yeah.
The medium and heavy armor definitely look metallic to me. It's hard to tell exactly, but I think the heavy one is probably Hrothic alloy. That may have been in the...
Actually, that's a good point. It would be. Because it does look shinier than leather would be.
Yeah. So it might be a transition from leather to some sort of metal like iron, and then to Hrothic alloy possibly.
Because it's the sturdiest, so you'd put it on the heaviest.
Yeah, exactly. It's like showcasing the best that we have to offer.
That's neat. We've spoken a little bit about the architecture. I don't know if there's much more we can really speak about that, except for I guess the crystals for your delvings.
Yeah, the crystals took me by surprise.
Yeah,
I'm not
there's been no
sure.
mention of them.
Yeah, they got mentioned in the post in which they were put out, which I believe I have at hand here. Yeah, here it is. There we go. It says from Snipe Hunter's Shiny, sometimes you need to dig a little deeper to shine.
Aww.
It is the Hrothi always take advantage of what they find as they dig around. If a hill turns out to contain a natural cavern, or if the terrain is shot through with crystal that can be used to channel or diffract light for natural lighting, they'll incorporate what they find into their settlement planning, which you can see in the interior concept art.
It's beautiful.
I'm not sure how many will have that, because it seems kind of... I mean, maybe if they are built to be centered around them, then we'll see quite a few.
Yeah, because if you're digging out your own caverns or finding new caverns, you'd probably have to construct the natural lighting down.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder how that'll go, but I would like it, for sure.
Definitely.
Especially in my capital, which may be big and need the light.
Very... Definitely with the scope of it.
Oh, yeah.
Another feature of the architecture are actually a lot of triangles and circles, but that's not so much because they like the geometry, it's more because of structural integrity.
Well, chicken and egg question, I think. I think it's probable that they turned out liking them because it works. I'd like to see the old Proto-Nerin Hrothi first attempts, but as far as their current architecture goes, yep, there's a lot of triangles, not as many circles, but you do see them. At least looking at the concept art, you see a lot of triangular roofs, but you also see stuff like there's almost a pentagon or hexagon style archways. A lot of geometrical shapes that aren't actually circles or triangles, like the roofs on the outside of Hrothi delvings sort of look like crystal faces, like octagons.
They have more faces.
Yeah. And the columns, I suppose you could say they're circular, so
They're circular,
you can give a point to them for that.
Either way, it's going to look stunning.
Oh yeah, I love it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I want to see more dome.
Yeah.
Perfect application of those circles.
That could be a challenge, having a full circular settlement.
Well, hopefully the tunneling mechanics allow that. That would actually be... Don't tempt me. I already have architectural ideas.
Just put another one on the list. Just draw it out of a hat and you're good to go.
The Hrothi ideas hat, and it's all just crazy.
Now, as for history, I was really just going to read verbatim from the website because it's actually good as is, but if you wanted to paraphrase, I wouldn't be against it.
Hrothi existing lore is actually my weakest suit, so you could go ahead with that.
Fantastic. Story time, guys. So, before the Nerin, Kipik, Hrothi, or Brudvir, there were what scholars refer to as the Proto-Nerin. It's believed that the aforementioned current-day tribes are all descendants from this prehistoric race of man. It is unknown how their distinct evolutions began, but at some point in their distant past, a catalyst led to the fracturing of the Proto-Nerin and forced them to flee from their established homelands. During this fracturing, capitalized, take note, the early tribe of men fled in multiple directions in order to escape some unknown enemy or ailment. Some of the Proto-Nerin headed to higher ground, travelling up to where the air was so thin and the trees so dense that no one or nothing could follow them. Others headed south, into the broadleaf forest and took shelter within the trees themselves. And yet others still burrowed deep within the mountains that bordered the temperate steppes, creating a home and economy for themselves in the security and safety of the timeless stone. Over countless years, from a time before written record until today, those Proto-Nerin who fled into the mountain have become the Hrothi. End of story time. I'm curious what this event was that drove the Proto-Nerin from their homeland, and if it will be relevant.
I have my ideas.
Yeah.
I headcanon a lot, but as far as that goes, I tend to think it's the same sundering that the Kindred talk about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of overlaps between the Hrothi Vittori idea of the war between the virtues and the
Mm-hmm.
vices, and the sundering that's supposed to have happened, which was a separate Kindred, which was, I believe, had to do with Daemon.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that each of the tribes, including Hrothi, has some sort of impression of something very bad that happened, whether it was supernatural or not, and that basically builds up their whole. So the
Yeah.
fracturing. Oh,
I
yep.
wonder if it will come into play though. Like maybe it's an event. Someone discovers more information about this
Oh, I think it's
occurrence.
absolutely going to happen. I don't know when. It may be something to keep for a little later into the story, perhaps,
Mm.
but maybe it would come with the Titan Step stuff.
Oh, that would be good timing. Oh, tab
Yeah.
together.
Especially if you get the idea of, well, the Hrothi going into the mountains to hide and something terrible is going on the surface, like, a cataclysm or a sun, all capitalized.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. And there is an aspect of religions sort of competing with the law, so we can't tell for sure what's truly happening.
Culture-wise,
Oh yeah,
I'm not
so
quite sure what you consider culture, but have a
I
stab at
have
it.
some ideas. So Hrothi culture, I've sort of taken it in a bit of my own direction, but as far as
Mm-hmm.
the actual Hrothi law goes, is they are gruff as their language, steadfast.
Mm-hmm.
They're very reminiscent. They are focused on the past and of recognizing past events, past heroes, and past things that somebody might have done to wrong you.
Well, on
Which
that note, that's
yeah.
actually really important to the Hrothi.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal. And
They specifically believe that all sins should be remembered and paid in interest.
yep.
So they actually have a saying, your misdeeds will be your grandchildren's misgivings.
Which gives me
Oof.
a lot it reminds me a lot of the Warhammer dwarves in their Book of Grudges, which
Oh,
may have been inspiration there, and I do
maybe.
think it fits. The idea of old things coming back to bite you fits the Hrothi, given they don't live any longer than other tribes, but I think that they are older in spirit anyway.
Well, especially with the way that they have their history written down and they're always educating the new generations about the history.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And to the extent that they write the other tribes' histories for them after they've forgotten.
mm,
So you have in the ancient, great libraries tucked away all the other tribes' lore, even after they may have forgotten it, because we've got, perfect halls of stone and hallowed tomes and illuminated manuscripts. But yeah, preservation and survival specifically of objects is a big
mm-hmm.
thing for Hrothi. Like it comes into the architecture. They want things to be as stable as possible, built into rock itself, so nothing short of earthquakes or tectonic shifts are gonna hurt their settlements.
Don't tempt Caspian.
Hey, look, it's content. As Lady Grace and other Hrothi would say, it's content.
everything is everything is content.
Everything is content. But yes, they're meant to have basically permanent settlements that can survive for time immemorial and onward. They have books, which are often, when they consider them important, carved out of stone. Uh, they have, well, even in terms of their politics, they think that the oldest and wisest should rule, which I find kind of funny. But there's a reason why when I create my Hrothi character, I'm going to push them to be as old as possible. Because the leadership
Ah.
mechanics of Hrothi actually say that when there's a leadership vacuum, the oldest person, in that domain who's eligible gets the casus belli to take. So they're about old things basically. They like rocks. They like, well, the only thing that's synonymous with old people they don't like is beards. It's almost a shame.
A fair point.
But oh well, exceptions to the rule.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Hrothi are very big on honesty and sincerity, and actually there is a very strong trend of conformism in Hrothi that is probably restrictive to prospective players if they're interested in the tribe, where you basically don't get away with crime in a Hrothi delving. I can't imagine how you would.
No.
Because, for one, all the tunnels are basically, little choke points to put little Hrothi guards in. But every Hrothi, because of their deep Vittori stuff, not as militaristic as Neran, but certainly very inwardly pious, they're not going to put up with it.
No.
And as far as I've seen, they seem like they'll have far higher reputation negatives for being outside of the grain. Kind of almost like Weird, which is a funny
It is.
Yeah.
But I see where you're drawing it from.
Yeah, like Weird are very conformist in one sense of exactly emulating behavior, whereas Hrothi are very conformist in sense of following the virtues and being good unto others and basically not rocking the boat is Hrothi's thing.
And saying that, though, I don't want to give people the impression that they are rigid, but they are also open-minded.
Yeah,
because they're accepting of other religions, and they also are accepting of Hrothi who don't outwardly follow the virtues so long as they remain virtuous.
Yeah, exactly. As far as that goes, it's really interesting actually how they, with themselves, they're very basically self-policing and critical, but religiously they're very open, and they believe that as long as you're abiding by things that are in line with the virtues, then yeah, you're golden, thumbs up. So it's actually, that's one of those differences from the Weird comparison there, where Weird are basically scripturalists, where it's like, if you do not follow exactly what the twofold queen, wants, then you're out of here. Whereas the Hrothi are more about, as long as you behave nicely, whether that's part of my creed or yours, then you're good.
I like it. I love it.
So yeah, it's depending on what settlement you probably go into, you would probably have the most unharmed presence as a visitor. And as far as Hrothi judging you goes, they're never going to punch you. They're just going to give you snooty looks.
Snooty looks.
So it's not the end of the world.
Correct.
Although it may, not abiding by the virtues may give people casus belli against you, depending on how fame ends up.
Depending on what your position is.
Yeah, like if you're a cheeky Hrothi who has 5 gold necklaces and stuffs their face with imported Drassian luxury foods, then you might not be as popular with your people, and that might actually give you a political weakness.
Because you're not following the idea of virtuous.
Yeah. Whereas for me, I'm just leaning straight into the idea of going full Vittori, even possibly to my own
detriment.
Downside, yeah, because I'm going to be very vulnerable to assassination.
Yes, but you're not going to be vulnerable to casus belli, or however you pronounce it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to have my little monk's robe and, as frugal as possible. I don't know what I'm going to be doing with my mansion.
That's okay. You've got time to figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah. A good Hrothi gives, which is another cultural touchstone, generosity.
Yep.
That's especially used to stuff like the longest night, which is when there's basically a year-long eclipse, I believe, or is it 3 years?
The eclipse itself is technically 1 full year, but you've got the time that the eclipse begins and ends, so it ends up encompassing 3 years.
Yeah, and that's obviously in-game years, so 3 weeks in-game. Yes. But the Hrothi are known through quite a few lore posts, actually, to basically help out, stockpile food and give it to people especially the Broodvir and Neren in K1 and K2 and other servers, but not here.
No.
Yeah, they basically play the role of Santa Claus, which I feel like was intentional because I'm pretty sure that was a reference at some point.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a Hrothi clause at some.
Well, I like the idea that even their enemies aren't free from their charity, that the Hrothi do leave gifts free of obligation for enemies at the gates of their settlements during this time. It's so sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. And Hrothi, yeah, Hrothi generosity to their enemies. I wouldn't want to see it. Well,
Enemies?
I mean,
We don't have enemies. What are you talking
well,
about?
Hrothi don't have enemies, but just as a side note, we do have the best siege engine. But yeah, I looked it up. Yes, Hrothi clause is a thing with a K.
Wow.
I don't know what to think of that.
That's official?
Yeah, it's official.
Ugh.
Okay. I was more
we could make it
tactful.
work. We could make it work, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll just focus on the charity aspect, shall we?
Yeah. And I may be wrong because I was just looking at the Discord, so you don't have to ill just yet. I always am open to the possibility of being wrong.
I hear.
But yeah, as far as culture goes, those are basically the cornerstones: generosity, the Vittori religion, steadfastness, a rigidness of belief and morality, and yet an acceptingness of outsiders and other beliefs. Let's see if I'm missing anything.
I think it sums up all those sections you are referring to. Yeah.
And otherwise, just they like books and education, really. Lots of universities and not quite cultural, but they do have a different structure for guilds than the other tribes, which is that the nobility run them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, counts actually run the guilds for the Hrothi. I don't know how that'll work, or even if it'll be mechanically implemented, because it seems like a weird restriction, but the write-up for Hrothi on the website does state that guilds for the Hrothi are generally run by the count.
Okay.
Yeah,
That'll be interesting if they do implement it.
And it does sort of touch on the interesting idea that Hrothi are capitalistic, but they're also kind of centralized. Like, they like to hold power with themselves, and they don't really like people sticking their nose in their business. Very protectionist.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I think we've summed up that section very nicely.
Right.
Entertainment.
Oh, entertainment.
We don't have much in the way of knowledge of Hrothi entertainment at the moment, but there are some things we do know.
Yeah, there's a little bit to it. I believe they have a bit of music.
Not as much as the very southern tribes, but yes, they do.
Oh yeah, no, that's to say that the southern tribes in Kingdom 4 are the musical powerhouse.
Definitely.
You have the, Toresk of their instruments and the Dras of their singing and other instruments, and the Hrothi instead have, well, they're kind of more, what's the word? They're more like, they're very careful and slow and stolid in their art, just the same as they are in daily life.
Makes sense. Daily life usually translates to art.
Yeah, so instead of, jumping around and dancing, they kind of just tell songs that are chronicles of old times, or they will carve golems.
Do you know much about the stone golems? Because I've heard people banding it about in the Discord, but I don't know too much about them.
I think I know who you mean, who bandies it about, but actually I do not know much about the golems at all.
I don't think much information has really been given.
Yeah. There used to be more of a hot topic in the past, and jokes about them, semi-jokes about them being able to turn into, warriors and whatnot, which would be interesting. But as far as the golems go, I think they are just a form of Hrothi cultural expression for now, until we find out that they've actually got something to them.
Yeah, Fair enough.
Like, there may in fact be one, I just realized, in the concept art on the interior picture just on the right. There's a
Sorry, I'm
Hrothi in
looking.
relief, which may just be an artwork, but it could be how Golem's art is.
Oh,
It's that
there.
little
Yes.
Hrothi man.
Yeah. Could be.
Yeah, but until then, I have no idea what they look like or what their function is. There
Mm.
may be this little quote somewhere, but I have.
I shall just wait until we find more information.
Yeah, exactly.
But on the note of your songs, I'm just reading from, I don't know if this is from the website. It says that the Hrothi are proud people, so they will also sing songs of their greatest feats, but they will also sing of something as simple as a well-made shield.
Yeah, of course. Nice
there'll
and
be
simple.
Jaunty tunes about your shield.
Ugh, with Hrothi, I don't know if it'll be jaunty. I think it'll be more like lumbering.
Yeah.
Very heavy.
Heavy, yeah.
Heavy consonants, yep.
Yep. Still.
Heavy syllables, yep.
It's definitely going to be experienced different from the ones down south.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, as far as my own take is going, I've been thinking of Hrothi poetry, trying to write stuff with a falling rhythm because it's very heavy and low, which I feel like Hrothi would do.
Definitely.
And hopefully that gets into it, but that's right now just my own little custom
project
idea. Yeah, project.
That's cool. No, I get the idea behind it, so I think it has validation.
Yeah, but as far as Hrothi art and entertainment goes, it's a bit weird because I think it mixes with crafting as well. Because creating, objects is also an artistic expression, it seems.
Yeah. Their occupation is really a form of art to them.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if they make the distinction as strongly as, say, Genoa or Torres.
Yeah, well, we pretty much summarised economy up with the culture, which was nice, tied in very nicely. And education, we've also pretty much tied in. I just want to add on the education front, though. So the information, the knowledge is passed on from generation to generation, and you've got all the works and the libraries and whatnot. But if you're a Hrothi wishing to seek even further education, you will seek out a guild, a school, or an apprenticeship, very much like a standard Naren would.
Yeah, so it seems like, again, to use poor Torresk as my sounding board, the opposite of the Torresk model, which Torresk seem to be very family centralized with their education. Yep. You live in a family and you get a tutor or you have a personal library or something. Yep. The Hrothi instead seem to be closer to Weird again, where they have basically, academies and universities and libraries and everything to access. And there's actually an older quote, or maybe it's on the official website, but it also mentions the Grand Library that may be attached to those universities.
Yes.
Which are, I believe, actually lore locations, like on the lines of the 13 taverns.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Oh my gosh, what if you happen to have one in your settlement, your capital?
I'm not banking on it because it's so statistically unlikely, and I like to avoid any sort of anxiety over worrying about stuff like that. But it's certainly a possibility.
I mean, I would love to have one of those in my settlement.
Well, I mean, touching on that, as far as my thing, like I said, the reason I went for Hrothi is because of the library. So my plan has always been to have the library of greatest repute, at least in terms of storing the whole server's lore. And whether that's a grand library from the game itself, or one I have to build myself up from scratch with extra EP, I don't mind. It'd be certainly nice to have the the reputation of a great library.
Grand library, yeah.
But if somebody else gets it, then that's just more security for the documents and books that we'll be storing anyway.
Yeah, it's something that works for you and your character, like it's valuable still.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the sort of thing where I'm not really competing with other people looking for libraries as a the more universities and libraries, the better, basically.
The better, yeah. It's good. It's very friendly.
Yeah, friendly competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of friendliness, world
Oh,
relations.
I see. World relations.
Yeah.
Oh, Hrothi have some interesting ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Some of the southern ones have some
Oh.
interesting quote
Hey, hold up.
relationships.
Well, we'll get to that one when we get to it, I imagine.
Yes, we'll leave it for last, Charlie.
Yeah.
But friendly tribes. Who are we friendly with?
Oh, okay. So this one's really easy. The Nerin and the Broodveer, both are Proto-Nerin tribes, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So they all have a shared evolutionary slash, historical lineage. As far as their current relationships go, Nerin are friends of Hrothi because they have the same religion, and they presumably fought in one big war together. The Hrothi as the shields of virtue, and the Nerin as the swords of virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as Vertori theology goes, they sealed away the vices and virtues together. But as far as Broodveer and Hrothi go, it's more to do with just the fact they live close together and they've braved the same sort of climates together. And they have a mutualistic sort of agreement where the Broodveer can bring food and protection. I'm not sure about that being necessary.
Not yet.
And the Hrothi bring metal and stone, which, interestingly, Broodveer need for their tools, which we saw an old concept art of a Broodveer axe, which had a gigantic metal head, so presumably that's where they're getting the metal from.
Yeah. Is it the Broodveer that are the raiders?
Well, in my kingdom of Equitus, we do have Broodveer raiders, and I think it is their, like most players are doing raiding. But as far as their actual tribal focus is, I don't think they're geared towards raiding themselves. I think that's player interpretation.
Yeah.
Vikings.
Cool. Makes sense. They are very Viking-like.
Yeah, I don't. As far as raiding goes, but yeah. So Hrothi are friends of Nerin and Broodveer. Nerin for religion and history, and Broodveer basically for history.
Convenience.
But yeah, and convenience. Friends of convenience. I mean, why else would be friends of somebody that? Honestly.
Now the fun part.
Okay.
Unfriendly relations.
We'll start with Dras and the Weird, because those two have the interesting connection of both being twofold queen followers. Curiously, that isn't actually listed as the reasoning by Soulbound, but I feel like it is.
Yeah, no, you gotta remember though, the Hrothi don't discriminate against those who follow another religion, but I figured the Dras and the Weird probably do hold that against the Hrothi.
Oh yeah, I feel like Hrothi would have some level of like this is too far for the TFQ. Like it feels like a bridge too far, but I have no evidence for that, so it's just
because it's
speculation.
Yeah.
But the actual reasoning is the Dras will have iron, bog iron, which is appalling to me, and it's actually I wake up in covered in sweat every morning thinking about it. So that's not good at all. And the Weird also have metal and mineral access, less so than the Dras, I believe, because their supplies haven't been as touted as much as bog iron.
No,
but
I'm curious what they could actually be getting out of the desert as well. But it's still something.
They have delvings too, so who knows?
Oh, that's true.
And of course, following on with the theme here of economic dislikes is the Arashe, which we don't have on the server yet. But they're a lost tribe who apparently also have access to metals and minerals. But yeah, so it doesn't paint a great image that Hrothi dislikes all come from them disrupting the Hrothic metal monopoly. But yeah, we'll just look the other way. And that brings us to the go on.
The Kipik.
The poor Kipik. So,
Poor
full
Kipik. They're so hard
disclosure.
done by, damn it.
So, full disclosure, I actually like the Kipik, and I think
Yay.
Dawn's Throne will be angling towards friendly Kipik relations if possible.
Yay.
But that is not to say that both the other dukes and prospective Hrothi Duke of Equitus and the official law state that Hrothi don't like Kip.
It doesn't say, it's not quite that strong. It doesn't say they
Well,
don't like them. They just,
unfriendly.
they view them with distrust.
I mean, look, I think at the point where a Hrothi shopkeeper is staring at a Kip like warily until they leave the shop, I'd probably call that as counting.
Oh. Why such a feud between the smallest of the small?
Well, it's because Kipik are smaller. That's the whole reason.
Yeah,
We're
they're a
jealous of them
threat.
being smaller.
Well, it's more than that.
Well,
It's a safety thing.
yeah, of course it's a safety thing. They're the only tribe that can reasonably not be impeded by the ceiling heights of frothy tunnels, which means that, you know, where a broodvere may have to crawl around, you know,
Hands and knees.
in the frothy only zones, yeah, exactly, and Naren too. The Kipik instead can just run around like the little imps
They
they
can
are.
just skip on through. Shoot, shoot, shoot.
Grab a shoot, grab a bar of gold that's just lying out because we don't actually value the stuff that much. And
Shiny.
yeah, shiny. See, that's even worse. The Kipik love shiny stuff, and the Hrothi,
Yeah.
they're not as big on it.
No.
So it's just those gaudy Kipik.
Yeah. Well, the good news is, at least on the Oceania server, the Kipik don't intend to be power-hungry people who go and raid everybody. We are pretty much looking towards our own borders and working on our trade with all the other tribes. So I don't really think the Hrothi have anything to fear in regards to the Kipik on the Oceania server. Maybe vastly different on the others.
Yeah.
But for us at least, please try to view us with less distrust.
Oh yeah, and we'll run a few trial runs of Kipik tourists and see how much stuff disappears. And depending on how well you guys rate, then we'll determine your access in the future.
You know, from a Hrothi standpoint, I can see that actually happening.
Well, haven't you ever heard of the old Hrothi test? You put a bar of, whatever precious on the table in front of the lobby, and you see if the Kipik can walk past without taking it.
Fail every time.
Oh, well, you'd better not. I'm going out on a limb here.
Oh, just sell it to us and you'll be right.
Okay, fine.
If you just sell it to us, there's an opportunity for us to just go light fingering and take it.
Yeah, and bring some ironwood in exchange, and we'll be good.
Yep. Sounds like a plan.
Beautiful. But yes, we'll see how we can heal the divide between the two shortest people.
Yeah, I mean, we've really got a lot against us, stature-wise.
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
should really be bonding with our mutual stature.
Well, chances are we're just jealous because the shorter you are, the less expensive it is to actually build tunnel. Probably want to be shorter.
That's true.
Yeah, you heard it here first. The secret justification.
Love it. It makes so much sense now.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, that sums up the world relations at present. Is there anything else you feel that you want to add? Maybe a summary of why you think our fair viewers should choose Hrothi?
Yeah. I think it would come down to more the people who I think would like Hrothi and why they should go for them in that case. As you might have gathered over all of the ways I've touched on, their security and their steadfastness, if you want to play Chronicles of Ellyria basically as an Ultra Care Bear, which is exactly what I'm doing, you should pick Hrothi without even a second doubt. The only tribe I'd say that runs up close is Kipik, because their settlements are structurally very similar to Hrothi underground ones because of all the verticality.
Yep.
But even then, it's like, apples and oranges, because Hrothi are just, as I said before, so incredibly overpowered defensively that I sometimes don't believe it. And I have a vested interest in them being so. But if you basically want to run a very safe crafting character or pursue politics without having to worry about, being invaded out of nowhere, even very structured military gameplay would also work. Being rangers out on your little woolly goat mounts up in the valleys. The Hrothi structure and design is basically geared towards people who don't want to be messed with, which fits their lore perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
There also is the option of being, say, a Hrothi explorer, which is probably a niche approach, but I do know some people in Equitus who are aiming to.
Okay.
But yeah, basically, go for Hrothi if you want to be safe, if you don't want your stuff taken from you, pretty much. If you're interested in the 10-year story, because for one, they've got the libraries and everything that will have a lot of focus on the lore itself,
Mm-hmm.
and they're also right next to the place where it's going to be kicking off.
Mm-hmm.
And Caspian says specifically they'll have a role in it.
Yep. So if you want to be at the
Yeah.
front of the event action side of the game,
Yeah,
Hrothi would be the place to go.
exactly. Or if you're interested in trade, Hrothi will basically always have something to sell. Whether it's metals or something else like stones or something else dragged out of the ground, possibly even alchemical ingredients if our fungi and starberry bushes end up being valuable enough.
Mm-hmm. There you go, guys. If you want any of the above, head on over to the Hrothi biomes and the kingdom up to the north, and you can find a home with Saebelorn down in his duchy. Cool name, Dawn's Throne. Don't know why you wouldn't place there, guys. Says the person who didn't place there. But cool name.
Titan's Throne to the west as well.
Yeah, so it was also cool.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, Saebelorn, for joining us for this Hrothi dissection.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I could sort of sit in here and emphasize that I am the #1 Hrothi fan.
That you have. So there you have it, guys. If you're going to play as Hrothi, that's the reason why you should do it.